Anything else? We can have a motion to adopt the agenda. Thanks, Donna. All in favor? Carried. We had the minutes circulated from the November 14th Committee of the Whole meeting. Did anybody see any errors or omissions? Thanks, Tom. All in favor? Carried. We had the minutes of December 4th regular council meeting. Any errors or omissions?
So moved.
Thanks, Jason. All in favor? We have a public hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. I'll call the public hearing to order. Welcome, everybody. Can I confirm that the verify that the notice of public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Yes, it has, Ms. Chairwoman.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I move that we suspend council so we can go into the public hearing.
Thank you.
There's just the one public hearing, yeah.
There is just one. Are there any written submissions?
All in favor?
All in favor? Thanks, Glenn. Carried. Are there any written submissions? Okay. Odessa?
All right, thank you. So this is a public hearing for bylaw 2018-22 for redesignation. It's to redesignate approximately 1.28 acres from agricultural general to community service district within the Southeast 162621. The location is adjacent to Township Road 262 and approximately 10 kilometers southeast of the hamlet of Rosebud. Just some brief background. Council granted first reading of bylaw 2018-22 on November 6, 2018. Circulation for the public hearing was completed following council's decision, and no letters of opposition or approval were received. The intent of the redesignation is for the future subdivision and development of a cemetery proposed for the Midwest Hutterite Colony. Direct Control DC 15 was previously redesignated earlier this year. However, staff took in consideration the intent for a cemetery on the quarter section. Therefore, the lands remained as agricultural general. So in this case, the land, the land is being rezoned from ag general to community service and not Direct Control District 15. This is because DC 15, it does not accommodate a cemetery, neither does agricultural general. Thanks. So as per the Cemeteries Act, community service district has to be established, as well as a subdivision to separate out the parcel for its intended use as a cemetery. Just to go down into the Direct Control District map, let's see. So the area in red here is the proposed area for redesignation and use as the cemetery for the Midwest Colony. And as you can see, the remnant parcel is designated as DC 15. This is the location map. And that is all from me, and I don't have any other information to share.
Thank you, Odessa. Does the applicant wish to speak? Are there any persons in support of the application? Anybody with any concerns or opposed to the application? Do you have any final comments, Odessa?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll adjourn the public hearing and go back into regular council. Glenn?
I move that bylaw 2018-22 be given second reading.
Any discussion?
Just a question for Odessa. The community service district is normally, in our land use, it would just be for communities?
Not the district itself, rather in my previous report and in the second and third reading one, the municipal development plan states that typically institutional uses, which could encompass some of the uses in the community service district, are supposed to be generally placed within existing communities, just based off their intent and use by those community members.
So approving this doesn't go against our MDP or land use?
So in the strictest of terms, it technically does go against the MDP. However, considering the circumstances, the intended use and location of it, staff felt that it was appropriate to provide recommendation for approval as it is servicing an existing community, that being the Midwest Colony, and it would only be the Midwest Colony using these lands for the community service district and the cemetery. So yes, technically it goes against it, but considering the circumstances and the intent for the county to provide that community development opportunity and quality of life as per our GMS, again, staff felt that it would be appropriate that this would be a recommendation for approval from planning staff.
Thank you. The only thing I'm concerned of is I fully support the right of having a cemetery on your land, but that's the thing, it's not allowed on everybody's land. It's only community-orientated groups, as I don't think I could put a cemetery on my land.
So we had this discussion as well at the last meeting, and I'm going to provide a bit more clarity. So ultimately, staff, they do provide a recommendation based off of our analysis of the document, and technically anyone can provide an application for community service rezoning if it's outside of what is established in our MDP. Mind you, our MDP is quite outdated. It doesn't accommodate these kinds of uses and these circumstances. Another point is that ultimately council has that final decision. We provide the recommendation off of our analysis, but if council feels that it's suitable and that it's appropriate for that area, they can go against the MDP if they want. It's just at their discretion. So even though we're providing a recommendation, it's based strictly off of the circumstances of the application, whether it's going to cause any undue effect onto the neighboring properties, or if it's going to be unsuitable for that particular area. You could have any farmer come in and apply for it if we think it's going to be appropriately used and meet the general guidelines for multiple documents that the county has that's been passed by council, then we would provide that appropriate recommendation. So it does go against it. But in this case, we have provided some relaxation of it mainly because of the circumstances. So council also has that discretion too.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Quick question regarding the, down the road, if this cemetery was to be, lack of a better word, abandoned, would the county be responsible for maintaining it?
So it isn't, because it's a private cemetery, it's not a municipal cemetery. I would assume that we wouldn't take on the responsibility for it, that it would be based, I would assume maybe there would be a point that the county would require ownership of it. They would maybe buy it up, or the land transfer would have a condition in there maybe, but I'm not 100% sure. Just because I know for sure it's not a municipal cemetery, it definitely wouldn't be ours after it's abandoned or the property is left or sold to someone else. There might be a process in place where the county could take that land over if they so choose, and then it could become a municipal cemetery at that point, but I'm not entirely sure of the process. I'd have to ask our community services general manager for clarification on that.
Well, through the chair, could Nightingale, Cheadle, Ardnode, any of those small little hamlets that we have out there come in and making us the same application under our land use bylaw?
Through the chair, yes, I could. If Nightingale didn't have a cemetery right now, they could come in and they could apply for it. And if it was within the community boundaries or the area structure plan, because I believe we do have one for Nightingale right now, it could play into how we see that community develop in that way.
So what's the difference between that and what we're looking at here?
So what we have here is mainly the municipal development plan, where it states that typically a community service district is supposed to be located in existing communities. However, the Midwest colonies aren't necessarily considered, I guess, under the basic definition as an existing community, whereas we'd see hamlets and towns and cities. So that's kind of where there's that gray area that we're trying to accommodate and recognize that Midwest does have a community in its own sense, and that they can still have these facilities and amenities available to their community members and families that live there. So the biggest difference is just how we define a community, I think, in this case. They both still function as a cemetery for the people who live in that area.
So basically, we're just playing with words. Community is still a community, depending on how you just describe a community, so, okay.
Any further discussion? There's a motion on the floor. All in favor? Carried. Ben has moved third reading. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. For the next matter, I'm going to abstain myself due to pecuniary interest of our family. So if my abstention can be recorded, please.
Okay, we'll move on to first readings for bylaw 2018-27. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We'll be discussing the first reading to redesignate plus or minus 24.188 acres from Ag General to Intensive Industrial at Northeast 15, 25, 23 west of the 4th. It's adjacent to Range Road 232, approximately 9.3 kilometers northwest of Standard and 10 kilometers south of Rockyford. I'll just pull up the map so you can take a peek at it before I continue. There, so you can see Standard is just to the, the east of it. And they do have a current location. Their business is just a little bit to the north there. Okay, so the recommendation from staff is to grant first reading for bylaw 2018-27 to redesignate plus or minus 24.188 acres of Northeast 15, 25, 23 west of the 4th from Ag Gen to Intensive Industrial. So there are two motions on the floor that it be given first reading and that a public hearing be scheduled. The purpose of the application is to redesignate a portion of the parcel from Ag Gen to Intensive Industrial District to accommodate a future development permit application for the storage of 1.3G and 1.4G fireworks. This company currently operates approximately 3 kilometers north of the proposed location. They're applying to move their operations to the proposed location as development near the current location has prevented expansion of their business. The site plan enclosed in this package shows where the two storage areas are, where the pit can is, and where the in-transit building is. The two storage locations will hold up to 20 sea cans, and the pit can is for storing fireworks orders ready for pickup. The in-transit building is for short-term storage of transportation-ready shipments leaving the site via carrier. All containers will be secured. The proposed location is more remote than the current one. Currently, the parcel is cultivated, and the applicant intends to continue to do so around the development after the redesignation. The applicant has expressed they do not wish to subdivide the property. It's not county practice to spot zone, and it would be difficult to enforce setbacks if there are no registered property lines. The applicant has approached and garnered the approval of the adjacent landowners for the proposed development. An example of that letter was included in the package. In order to operate, they're required to follow Natural Resource Canada's explosives regulations. There's a national standard of Canada for explosives that outlines minimum setbacks from various types of potential explosive sites to exposed sites. So the explosion site would be where the storage is, and then the exposed sites would be any development around it. The proposed location currently meets the setbacks set out in the manual. The surrounding parcels are zoned agricultural general, and there is the potential for conflict, which would result in the business needing to relocate again. As the setbacks are imposed on the license holder and not on the adjacent development, it is ultimately their responsibility to ensure setbacks are maintained. And I apologize, I meant to mention before I started, the applicant is here, so if there are any technical questions, they would be willing to answer them. So through the policy analysis, the application generally aligns with the policies of the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. Though it is redesignating land from ag use to industrial, cultivation will still occur where possible around the development. The portion they are proposing to redesignate is naturally separated from the cultivated portion of the quarter section by a drainage course. In terms of land use patterns, it is an appropriate mix between industrial and agriculture. The location was specifically chosen to reduce impact on developments in the area. It also promotes economic growth and diversification in the county. The proposed redesignation generally aligns with the policies and objectives of the Regional Growth Management Strategy Plan. Though it is converting ag land, the applicant will continue to cultivate around the proposed development. The proposed redesignation captures the water drainage course inside its boundaries. Environmental studies can be requested at the subdivision or development permit stage to ensure the proposed development does not negatively impact this water course. The proposed development adheres to the 30-meter buffer around the drainage course. The proposed redesignation generally aligns with the economic growth and diversification policies. Though the RGMS encourages economic development near growth nodes, the hazardous nature of the proposed development requires extensive buffering from dwellings and other developments. The proposed redesignation is isolated from surrounding development, aiming to decrease the potential negative impacts of the proposed development. The proposed redesignation generally aligns with the municipal development plan. It contravenes the agricultural objectives in section 3.1 in that it is fragmenting agricultural lands. However, the setbacks this type of business is required to adhere to means there is little to no conflict between the two uses. It generally aligns with the water resource objectives of section 3.3. Though it is increasing the number of impervious surfaces on ag land, the proposed development is maintaining the county's 30-meter setback from the drainage watercourse. It generally aligns with the commercial and industrial development objectives of section 3.7. It is expanding and diversifying the county's industrial base. However, the proposed development is not in one of the designated areas. Allowing the redesignation would support the local business as they are unable to expand in their current location due to federal setback requirements. The applicant has stated this location has been approved by the Explosive Regulatory Division of Canada. All future development will be required to align with the rules and regulation of the intensive industrial district of the land use bylaw. There are landscaping, fencing, and screening standards the developer will have to adhere to at the development permit stage. The developer has already supplied an emergency response plan, a medical response plan, and a fire safety plan. Just bear with me, I'll have to open because I cannot read that. Oh, don't sass me. So we did circulate to external and internal departments. The Alberta Community Development suggested that the Water Boundaries Unit in Edmonton review the possible provincial bed and shore crown claim liability. As there's no condition able to be applied at the redesignation stage, nor lot lines are being created, there isn't really a way for Edmonton to, or for the province to take any bed and shore. I did reach out for a bit more clarification. I haven't received a comment yet. Alberta Health Services has the usual comments. They also wanted to note that they want to minimize industrial and residential interface, which this location does. And then Interpipeline submitted a weight sheet for the applicant to fill out, just for crossing requirements, which staff provided to the applicant. And then internally, there were no comments or concerns from the majority of the departments. Development requested that a subdivision to ensure that all setbacks are met for the proposed development on site. So staff is recommending approval. It generally aligns with the SSRP, RGMS, and MDP. The location was chosen specifically for the minimal impact the proposed development will have on surrounding properties. The proposed development maintains the 30-meter setback from the identified water drainage course, and the applicants have notified adjacent landowners of their proposed development and obtained letters stating there are no objections from them at this time. So this is the location map, the area plan, and I will show you the setback map. So this is their proposed development site. So you can see the two locations there for storage, their pit can, and then their in-transit building there. They also supplied a setback map. That's a little bit small. Oh, this one. Okay. So the closest residence is 382 meters, and the furthest is 1324. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike?
Through the chair, just a reminder to council, this application before you is for a first reading. So any detailed questions for the applicant or any others should be brought forward at a public meeting, or a public hearing, I should say.
Okay, thanks for that.
Through the chair, I agree. I was going to say the same thing as Mike did. I think we got nothing on staff, but I think we got too much information for the first reading. A lot of this brings up questions, but they shouldn't be brought to the table until the public hearing. So I'll move first reading.
Okay, Ben's moved first reading. Any questions?
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Does that mean no question?
No questions.
Okay. Okay. All in favor? Carried.
I'll move that public hearing for bylaw 2018-27 be scheduled for February 5th, 2019 to commence at 9 a.m. at council chambers.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. We'll just break for a bit till we get our Reeve back in here.
We have on the agenda a first reading to redesignate from Ag General to Industrial General.
Thank you. So this is for bylaw 2018-34 to redesignate approximately 10.6 acres from agricultural general to industrial general for a future subdivision and to accommodate an existing RV storage business. The location is southwest of 122424 west of the 4, adjacent to Range Road 241 and 1 kilometer south of Highway 1. The parcel of land is approximately 3.7 kilometers southeast of the county office as well. Recommendation from staff is that council refuse first reading of bylaw 2018-34 to redesignate 10.6 acres from agricultural general to industrial general. So this particular application has a bit of a history to it, as it is an existing RV storage site. It was previously permitted as a secondary use business as per our old land use bylaw, which provided temporary permits for that particular secondary use business. At the time, we didn't have permits for specific RV site storage. Otherwise, it would have been put into industrial general. So the last time this application came in, it was permitted with a 5-year secondary use business permit, and that expired last January on the 10th. However, with the approval of the new land use bylaw that same year in May, the secondary use business permit use was no longer included, and we moved towards the home-based business types 1, 2, and 3 to accommodate these types of uses. However, RV storage in itself isn't a home-based business, so it didn't fit within that particular function. Instead, it was recommended that an RV storage permit itself be issued. However, that's only applied for in industrial zones. In this case, we have the request to zone to industrial general, which it is a discretionary use in. In addition to the RV site storage, there is an existing dwelling, which was possible to exist alongside the business at the time that it was previously permitted. However, in this case, if there is the rezoning of IG, The dwelling itself is not a permitted use in that district, so it would have to be converted, and it has been recommended and supported by the applicant to be used as a security employee dwelling instead. So that would come at the subdivision development stage to finalize those particulars of re-permitting that dwelling. At the time, the RV storage site did go through an appeal in 2012, and the amount of storage capacity was increased to 200 units within the Phase 2, and then the Phase 1 was allowed for 35 RVs. Based on staff's site visits and aerial photography that we've had over the years, we can see a general compliance with this RV storage capacity, so staff don't have any concerns about that. It was also, the reason for the appeal in itself was to appeal the condition for dust abatement, which was recommended to be only done in front of the dwellings within that area. Instead, the SDAB required that the dust abatement be done along the length of that range road there up until Highway 1. So at this time, staff have records that show the last time it was done was in 2015. However, that could be re-reviewed at the development permit stage if this application proceeds to that point for subdivision and redesignation. In addition to that, there were a number of conditions on the original permit to allow for vegetation and berming and fencing, and with the site visits that we went to, it has been confirmed that that has continued, and so the parcel itself has matured since that time, and so many of the trees that were planted have grown up, and they've provided sufficient coverage. And staff at this time don't believe there's any necessary further applications or requirements for fencing and berming, but that can also be further determined at the development permit and or subdivision stage if the MPC deems it necessary. With regards to policy and relevant documents for the county, staff is recommending refusal mainly because of the misalignment with the municipal development plan. The municipal development plan explicitly states that once a sixth parcel is created, which is what this application is intending to do, an area structure plan is required. So the parcel or the quarter section in itself already has 5 titles. This would create the 6th one if subdivision is approved and moved forward. And so the applicant didn't submit an area structure plan. However, as per the MDP, it is explicit in 2 sections that an ASP is required. And that's mainly the route that staff is taking on our recommendation, is that the MDP has been non-compliant. Otherwise, the site itself is pre-existing. It's an existing use as per the IG district. The area that is being redesignated or proposed for that is strictly encompassing the industrial use. The agricultural parcel itself would be left, and it would be continued to be zoned as agricultural general and function as a cultivated parcel. Otherwise, the RGMS itself loosely speaks to industrial development in the county, mainly saying that it should be focused in areas along the highway corridors, such as the West Highway 1, and other industrial corridors, such as the Goldfinch, which is eventually going to be brought forward to council. However, this is a pre-existing property. It was approved and motioned through, and so it doesn't necessarily meet the requirements of the RGMS, but because of its pre-existing nature, it does end up being brought in under the previous land use bylaw and decisions by MPC and council. Otherwise, the land use itself, as previously mentioned, the RV storage is a discretionary use within the IG district. However, dwelling would have to be re-permitted as a security or employee office. The agricultural parcel is continued to be used as an agricultural parcel, and there are no pre-existing structures or facilities on the site, so it would continue to be cultivated, and it would have to maintain its designation, and the uses within it would also have to be complied with at that stage. Aside from the general circulation that we did, Alberta Health Services did just provide a general comment regarding the proximity between industrial uses and residential areas. However, as previously mentioned, this is an existing use. It has been in use and functioning as its own business for a number of years. And currently in our land file, we don't have any complaints or concerns from residents that have been brought in during its existence. So staff don't have any concerns with Alberta Health Services comments or any further concern about the existing business and its impact on the surrounding parcels. As well, transportation, Alberta Transportation provided some comments, but because it is existing and it's accessing off of the Range Road 241, they had no concerns with it being near the Highway 1 access road. So at this time, as previously mentioned, staff is recommending refusal mainly because of the non-compliance with the MDP and requiring an ASP for the area once the 6th parcel is essentially being proposed. Otherwise, staff don't have any other comments regarding the parcel. If there are any questions about the application itself, I'm more than happy to take those. Thank you.
Any questions, discussion?
Yeah, I have some questions, but without the applicant being here to come, I'm struggling.
applicant
I
is
know,
here.
but this is first reading.
Yeah.
This is not a public hearing, so we're not getting, so I'm struggling with that, and I have some questions on it, so I would like to see it go to a public hearing so that we can ask some of the questions that are, otherwise we end up in a, I'm going to move first reading.
Discussion? There's a motion on the floor. All in favor? You want to do a second motion for a public hearing? Or some
Yeah, I'll put that one on the floor too if nobody else wants to.
discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We have information regarding the Cluny Fire Hall. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do Goldfinch first. Yeah, I should put my glasses on.
All right, so I have bylaw 2018-31 for third reading. This is to adopt the Goldfinch Area Structure Plan. Back in November, we had Council Grant second reading. There were amendments requested, though, to staff and ISL, who was a consultant on this project. Since that time, we have done 2 amendments as per the meeting. One of those is to include a map identifying residential dwellings outside and within the proposed ASP boundary area, and that can be found in the third reading draft that was included in the agenda, as well as amending the emergency evaluation radius. We changed it from 1.5 miles to 3 miles as per the request of Nutrien and their comments that they provided to staff and the county. Aside from those 2 changes, nothing else was requested by staff or by council, so all the background stays the same. So at this point, staff is recommending that council grant third reading of bylaw 2018-31 to adopt the Goldfinch Area Structure Plan. Option 1 is to approve bylaw 2018-31, and with the motion to give third and final reading. Thank you.
Discussion? Council's wishes? One more.
There we go. I'd like to move that council grant third reading to bylaw 2018-31 to adopt the Goldfinch Area Structure Plan.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Now we can do Cluny Fire Hall. Indeed. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. Excuse me. So through the chair, the information you see on the screen here is a request to bring forward some options regarding the Clooney Fire Hall. As you're aware, the fire hall was closed due to, as it says, discovery of mold and potentially unsafe conditions, working conditions within the building there. The building was closed and assessed for mold and some delinquent code violations, basically. So we did an assessment of the building and came back with a few options here. So basically, we had a remediation company come in, specifically look at the building, and made an assessment of repairs required to that, based on the mold assessment that Wood had presented a few months ago here. So we came back with the first option being to remediate the existing building, basically remove the drywall, bleach, clean up all of the mold, and ensure that it's gone and removed. So that quote, we came in at around $28,000, and that is this removal and disposal of the affected areas. In addition to that, we actually looked at the repairs of those buildings. So I think it's primarily drywall repairs, but there is some flooring and some roofing as well, some ceiling areas that were affected. So the repairs, we estimated about $25,000 to bring that up to standard, basically. Remove it and bring it back up to a livable state. So we have those two in addition to the remainder of the remediation from the trucks and gear. Sorry, that's for the furniture and the miscellaneous, will be another $16,000. So we're looking at about a total of $70,000 to have that building brought back up to a occupiable state, basically. So that's our high-level assessment of that right now without being able to go too deep into the building. So that is one option. We also looked at some alternatives of basically just removing the building, which is an option, and accessing or operating outside of another building. So just looking at the removal of that building, demolition and removal is around approximately $23,000 is the quotes we got for that. And third and final option we look at, in addition to the demolition, would be constructing a new fire hall. We looked at some comparables that were done in the vicinity, and we're looking at around $900,000 for a new, I believe it's a three-bay fire hall to be constructed. Very entry-level fire hall, basically. There's nothing fancy about this one for $900,000. So that's the one actually that was built in Vulcan County. Stewart actually had a hand in that, so we got some pretty accurate numbers on that. So this is coming for you as information right now, and hopefully there'll be a direction after some conversation here.
Through the chair, I've got a question. With your estimates here, and when I was reading through it, and then you go into the next one where you're looking at your vehicle storage, I think it needs to be part of this also. Because if we look at the option to remediate, that $70,000 should include the cost of the storage of those vehicles in the haul across the track. So I'm assuming that $70,000 would run closer to $80,000, $85,000, $90,000 before. Because if we're going to remediate it, we're storing the equipment for time to move back in there. That cost should be added to this cost, because there is a cost to storing that equipment, right?
You can.
Through the chair. It's anticipated, I don't know how long the repairs are going to be, but we've got a 3-month contract. That's what's coming before council next. So it'd be 73,000, and, we'd extend it by a month at a time after that. So I'm anticipating if we repair, it shouldn't be longer than 3 months to rip everything out and put drywall back in. That's my opinion, but you may have a better idea.
Okay, thank you.
Judy, what's the stance on the Galician Hall? Is it in pretty good shape?
Through the chair. The Galician Hall is the same age as the Clooney Hall. They've just been really fortunate and they've kept it up very well. So our current occupational health and safety had a couple of housekeeping items, our inspection, but there is no mold and it's just kept in better shape.
And between the two departments, is all the capital, just got to word this properly for you. If we were to merge the two departments, is all capital necessary?
Through the chair. At this time, I'd have to look more in depth at that, and I would lean into the new general manager who's been here for 5 days to help me make that decision. Currently, all the capital is not being used. You're talking about the rolling assets, not necessarily the 2 fire halls. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We'd have to look at the deployment of what they're going to. They do a lot of grass fires and a lot of structure fires there in that common area. So I can't with any assurance give you a yes or no. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I would like to see just a cost analysis on merging the 2 halls before I make any further decision, before I make a decision, whether that be is all the rolling assets necessary, because if we can get resale value out of that and build a new hall, I think that would be a pretty good bonus. And Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of the calls, though, were motor vehicle between the two.
Through the chair, I don't have the exact stats in front of me. They go to largely fires and motor vehicle collisions. So
Yeah.
I would ask council to remember our wildfires in Gleason that we had last year that devastated the Gleason and Clooney area. So they do an inordinate amount of fires, and certainly MVCs along Highway 1.
So with that being said, I think access is very important, and the access between both departments isn't great. And when you have the number 1 highway there, I think I would like to see a cost analysis on having a new hall on the number 1 for greater access as well. So whether that be land purchase as well, because that would be a cost. But I would like to see kind of the cost of merger between the two departments and the cost saving as well. So, thank you.
Just a question. There's a transfer of ownership tied into this. Is that complete yet, or is this still not our building?
Through the chair. We have met several times. I've met personally 3 times with the Clooney Association, and I really thought Dave Nelson would be present this morning. He had intended to be here at 9. We're very, very close. These gentlemen want to transfer the assets to us. They're very reticent to do so without assurance that there would be fire provision in that hall until such time as a new building can be made. I brought the general manager on his second day with us out to Clooney with me, and I believe, and you can contribute, I believe that they really do want to sign this over, and they really do want to transfer the assets to us, but they're very nervous about doing it because they understand that there isn't a fire truck in Clooney, and they would really like, we've rewritten the transfer of asset agreements now 3 times with them. They'd really like to have it said that fire service will be provided from the Clooney Fire Hall until such time as a new fire hall is built. So we're close. We're very close.
So through the chair, just to add to that, or a further question to that, and what Jason is saying, if that's what their goal is, and you're still negotiating with them on the transfer, does that mean they want us? I'm hearing from that they want us to spend $80,000 to $100,000 rebuilding a building that's going to get tore down a year and a half from now, or are they satisfied with the storage agreement that you're looking at with Siksika for their condition that they be serviced out of Cluny?
They are, through the chair, I'm sorry. They are well aware that there is a service agreement coming forward to council today to store the vehicles in Siksika, so they can have an opportunity to go to Siksika and respond to the Cluny area. I think it is their wish that the fire hall be repaired until such time as we can build a new building, which may actually buy us time to build a new building, so we don't have two big capital projects on the go at the same time. I anticipate, given our experience with Carsland, that it will be at least a year or longer before we're able to put a building in, no matter where council should decide. But that is just my opinion.
I like what Jason brought forward. I'd like to see for the whole area, because we've discussed it, we're looking at service levels in the future as well. My decision would not support fixing the existing building up for the reasons that they're asking for it to stay there, because I think in the future here is we have to be financially responsible and provide a service in the area. If they wanted to continue running it, they've had that option. They're dropping it. So my decision is no bias on what they want to do, because they're giving it back to us. So
Through the chair, my concern is the same as Scott's. They've basically given up the association, so they don't, and yet they still want a condition in there that they have a house for a couple of fire trucks in Cluny to service everything north of Cluny. It would be different if they were in the middle of their area. They're on the far south end of it, and some of their area is better serviced by units from other fire departments than their own. The only place that it makes sense is in the hamlet itself. So I agree with Scott on that.
Yeah, Judy, it says up there the complete remediation and building it up is 70,000 to complete the remediation repairs to the building. 70,000, right?
Through the chair, the 70,000 is the total for the building repair and the remediation. I'd like to point out that we have to remediate that stuff either way.
That's
even
right.
if we build them a new hall. So the repairs, I'm sorry, this isn't my RFD and I can't speak to it, but it looks like the repairs are estimated at 28,000. The remediation portion is going to happen regardless.
Okay, so we could safely say we could take the 28,000 off the 70,000 for the building, is what I'm reading?
No,
Oh,
sorry, through the chair, the 28,000 is for removing basically the contaminated material, and then another 25,000 to rebuild the building. So we're looking around 55,000 to have it back occupiable, regardless of any equipment or anything like that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what I was getting at. So it's 55,000 to fix up the building
The
to
building
use it
alone.
again.
Correct.
And it would cost us 23,000 to haul it away if we decide to tear it down.
That's correct, yes.
So for $30,000 net, we can fix the building up.
Correct.
And if we keep it a year or two, we would have something that would be saleable, I'm thinking. I don't know how saleable, but if we have a good building. So our investment to keep a truck in Cluny is $30,000. It's not, to me. So we're paying how much to store the trucks in?
Through the chair, we're paying $1,000 a month. It's a 3-month contract currently, so it'd be $1,000 a month for the first 3 months, which would give us an opportunity to repair the building, and then it's a month-to-month renewal after that.
So 1,003, that's 30 months.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, I might have misspoken. $1,000 a month. It's a 3-month agreement, so $3,000. And then $1,000 for every month we need it after that.
Okay, so to pay for a building, all we have to do is not rent it for 30 months, which is 2.5 years, and it would take us that long. I'm betting to build a new one. So for me to fix up that hall is a wash, and we could have the trucks there. when I look at it that way. I don't know if anybody else looks at it that way.
Remediation costs can be figured out because you know what it's going to take to remove that stuff and do that. The rebuilding cost, that 25,000, I think is horribly light in the fact that as soon as you've opened that thing up, you now have to bring everything up to code. So I would really, really like to see what that actual $25,000, I want like a hard and fast quote on what that job is, like have that quoted, because I'm thinking that is really light.
I don't think we can get it coded until we have the asset. This is as much in depth as we can go until the asset is ours.
So through the chair, we did request that a more detailed quote be performed. We weren't able to find any contractors that would enter the building until the remediation was complete. So we can have that done, but we'll have to get the remediation done prior to them entering the building.
Sorry, new guy. Through the chair. In regards to bringing the building to code, we do not have to meet current building code with this building. It was built pre-code, and we are not changing occupancy. Therefore, we can do pre-79 standard.
Okay, but what happens when we take this building and try to sell it then?
Then that will be up to the new occupant to change the code depending on the occupancy they wish to utilize the building.
So remediation costs, if we demolished it, we'd probably still have to go in there and remediate it regardless. So to me, then, if I look at it that way, we have to spend the money on remediation. Once we, this always tied key on transfer of ownership. I refuse to, and my vote refuses to go forward unless we own the building. So if we have the building done, I have no problem remediating it, and then it gives you a chance to get a fair quote and see what the numbers actually come back at. And then from that point, regardless, we have to get rid of that.
But if we just go straight to demolition, we don't have to remediate it. We can't demolish it because it is in our building. Because we could do that, we'd solve other problems in the county. Yeah, so sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Yeah, so we can't do anything until we own that building. We can't do everything has to sit here unless the association, if they have and once we own the building, there's every possibility in the world that building will be, 3 years down the road, will be moved, and we will have a joint service in Cluny and Gleason, because that would be the most fiscally responsible thing we could do. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
Judy?
I would like to bring through the chair, council's attention to Dave Nelson, the president of the Cluny Association, sitting in the council chambers. I wouldn't pretend to speak on their behalf, but I think that they're well aware that a new building will be sometime in the future. I think their primary concern is about providing fire service in the Cluny area in the interim until we can build a new building. So I think they're very realistic about a new building coming, and that may or may not be in the area. I also wanted to clarify the quote for 28,200 is for the remediation, but we're still going to need to spend the other 16,000, approximately 17,000, to remediate the rest of the contents aside from what we've already done so far.
Glenn?
I disagree. I think we can go in and we don't have to remediate it. It could be the association, but if they were still the association, we provide granting funding to buy fire trucks, to fix up halls. This is an extraordinary remediation. It's not general maintenance, however you want to call it. But I don't have a problem getting the remediation done. Why would we prolong it? This is, to me, something that has to be done. Just because we don't own the building, we go in before we didn't own it, and we provided funds to add on to buildings. We provide funds to maintain them. We provide funds all the way along. So I don't have a problem going ahead with the remediation. Either way, it's part of our responsibility, I'm thinking.
Well, through the chair, just for information's sake, what is the holdup in the transfer?
Through the chair, would you like me to ask Dave to speak to that?
Mr. Nelson, would you like to speak to that question? If you want to just introduce yourself, just a note that our meetings are recorded and may be posted on the internet.
Dave Nelson, I'm, I guess, the president of the Clooney Rural Fire Protection Association. I don't know what the holdup is. We thought this would be done just about 9 or 10 months ago. We're meeting with Mrs. Unsworth here the last little while, and we're making real good progress. I anticipate that it will be done in January. We have no problem with what we've got put together.
So then my question is to staff, what's the holdup?
Through the chair. In our meetings with Mr. Nelson, he has made it very clear on behalf of the association that they would like fire service provided in that building until such a time that a new building is built. So we've revised the transfer of asset agreements 3 times right now. We met with them last week, and the current revision has, it's going to go to Alan for approval before it comes to you, because some of the verbiage in there has changed dramatically, which says that council will guarantee fire service will be provided in that building until such time as a new building can be built. So I was uncomfortable bringing that to council in that state, although that is clearly what the association's wishing. Correct? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't hear that well.
Short of the 3 or 4 or 5 months that it will be housed in another building, they're aware of that.
Through the chair, I believe the association is very aware that we're working on, or we have an agreement with Siksika to house their apparatus, at which time they can respond into the Clooney response area with the Gleason Fire Department. I believe the concern of the association was to ensure that fire suppression was provided from that building.
That's right. Provide fire protection for the area and the highway from that building until it's replaced. And Mr. Wilson seems to be fixated on who owns the damn thing. And we don't care who owns it as long as it's used as a fire hall. And we're in the process of transferring it right now. But we hesitated to transfer it in the first place until we had some commitment from you people that we were going to have fire service. You know, why would we transfer it and give it to you if we're not going to have fire service? And we haven't really, other than today, that's the first time I've heard, and I admit I haven't been present in everything. It's the first time I've heard commitment that some of you are willing to provide fire service down there.
So from a council perspective, our municipality is actually obligated to provide fire service for the area, but it's council's responsibility to do that in the most fiscally responsible way. Yeah. So you have a commitment that fire service will be provided in that area by our council, but it's our responsibility to determine what that looks like.
I realize that, but when you consider the fire service that we had a year ago versus what we've got now, we've gone down the slope considerably, and I don't think that's council's intention.
It's not, but council also has to take into consideration where our call volumes are, and we have to consider our entire municipality when we're determining our fire service. There's shifting demographics, there's shifting call volumes, things like that. It's our responsibility to take into account all of those factors when doing our fire planning. So I'm very cognizant that there have been changes in Clooney, and we know that that's a complex issue. There's many factors that have contributed to that. So our responsibility here is to be fiscally responsible in the way we provide that fire management. What that looks like has to be determined.
Yes, we realize that. And we've been associated, the people have, 2 of us on the board have been associated with for 50 years.
Yep.
As a firefighter and as a director. And the call volumes in Clooney, if you want to check the map in Mrs. Unsworth's office, are considerable.
Yeah, they're provided to us every month, and we monitor those on an ongoing basis. They're always
Yeah.
part of our decision-making. Does council have any other questions? Or any direction?
I would just like to see what the options I've asked for.
So can you just reiterate, you were asking staff to prepare a cost analysis of combining the two departments into a joint service area?
Yeah, and the cost savings of the rolling assets, if they're all necessary or not.
Now, some of that may be being looked at as part of our fire master plan. Would I understand that correctly? So I'm just wondering, and I'm just cognizant of the time we've already spent kind of in this transition and kind of trying to deal with this on an interim basis. Does council have any direction for an interim? Like, I think, yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
Sounds like we have a request for decision coming up for the acquiring of the assets in the new year.
Through council, I would anticipate there will be one coming. I'd ask that the CAO review it to make sure we haven't impinged on any legalities that either the association will be caught with or we will be caught with. And I understand he's not back until the same time I'm back, which is January 6th. So if we don't move forward, nothing will be done until RFD is brought to council in February, I believe.
Okay, so that would be next year. So when we see that request for decision, we could have these numbers more finalized, what the actual cost would be to get the trucks back into Clooney. And then we can make that decision then at that request for decision. As far as Jason's request, that can go on for until we make the other decision. That's part of planning. That's a couple, 3 years down the road, right? I would think. But we can't make a decision today because it's hard without that request. So if that's a condition of us taking it over, I'll even go so far as if we make the association remediate and make that building, it's just taking funds out of the transfer, right? They're transferring us the property. They transfer it the way it is and we fix it up, or they pay for it and they have less to give us in the transfer. It's going to cost us the same amount of money. And we have to remediate it anyway. So I would leave it go to the request for a decision, accept this as information today, and get that request for proposal in here and get staff to finalize them numbers. And then after we get it remediated, we can decide, we can get a quote. And if the quote's too high, if it's ridiculous, we can tear it down, or we can fix it up, make the decision when we got some firm numbers. Today, the numbers aren't that firm. We're just grabbing at straws.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the quotes that have been provided are potentially as firm as we're going to get with the building in the condition that it's in.
Yeah, that's correct. Through the chair, like I mentioned, we were unable to get a contractor into the building to fully. So remediation, that's pretty much a guarantee. Councillor Eichert's correct that 25,000 has a potential to waiver depending on what they do find in there. That's an estimated cost of repair. So I don't think until we do the remediation as a start, 28,000, that we will know any more confirmed details or any cost estimates, any more detailed cost estimates on that.
So do we have to remediate it before we can tear it down?
Through the chair, to a portion, we do have to look at the building and there is asbestos, that sort of thing in there. So the disposal cost of these may increase depending on as they get into the building and tear it down as well.
So to clarify, if we pursued remediation as part of an interim solution, it could potentially reduce the deconstruction or demolition cost because all of the mold would already be removed and disposed of and that type of thing.
So through the chair, you can't proceed with remediation until you have another motion?
Right.
So why wouldn't we do that rather than take this as information, deal with the remediation, and then the rest would come after? We can't make any decisions till the remediation is done, and then we know the.
And to clarify, we could probably firm up the reconstruction quote once the remediation is complete, because it would be a safe environment for contractors to quote. Tom?
If we go straight to demolition, why do we have to have any remediation? This is what I don't understand. I understand that, yeah, you may have to, like, a building is too far gone, too moldy. You don't go in there and scrub all the mold off of it when you bulldoze it. That just doesn't happen. I mean, I understand the cost to landfill it will be higher, but that is still cheaper than I really I understand what we're trying to accomplish here, but this is a pig in a poke thing here. This thing can really honestly can run into $100,000, and me saying I told you so doesn't fix anything. We'll all have spent $100,000, and we all know, I think, in our heart of our hearts, that this is a stopgap measure. We are providing fire service to the Clooney area now. Not the best way that you want to do it, but they are covered. So before we sit down there and say, well, this is just, in my sense of mind, and I'm willing to be swayed, but I'm not going to be swayed today. This seems to be a waste of money to me. Like, we have not looked into this. We are looking at throwing a bunch of money at, and we don't know what the problems are. Like we don't know what the final number is. If you give me a final number and tell me it's going to be $90,000 guaranteed, then I'm good with that. But I don't think that is possible, and I just don't want to make a decision now.
I think before we can get a final number, either way, we have to get a contractor in there and see what the charge is. And the only way we're going to get them in there is to remediate. So how far we have to remediate before a contractor go in, I don't know if we have to scrub the walls, or is it just good enough to haul out some of it? I don't know. They're going to want it opened up. I'm sure they want the plasterboard removed. Once that is done, maybe they'll come in and quote. For me, remediation is up to the point we can get a contractor in to get us a quote to do it. And I don't know what that is, but either way, some remediation has to be done before we start, I believe. Scrubbing the walls, I don't think so. But hauling out some of that plasterboard, either way, that's part of the destruction.
Jason?
I understand where you're coming from, Glenn, but I don't understand. The one thing I can't fathom is how can you say we're going to pay $28,000 in remediation and then get a contractor in and, like Tom says, potentially pay up to $100,000, or even you could even make it 80. I mean, you could be under, but when you look at the cost of demolishing is 23. Like, to me, there's no comparison in what's more fiscally responsible. And I think we know there's going to, I believe there's going to be a change of government, and they're going to be looking at cuts. We already know our MSI funding is going down. I think we have to start making these tough decisions. But I understand that it's not our building to demolish, so I don't know where we can go with that. So
That's why I said we should wait for a request for decision to get all the numbers. I don't like making decisions without the numbers. And I don't like making decisions guessing it could go up to 100,000. The only sure way for me to have good numbers on both sides of the ledger is remediate it and get a contracted in there and give us a price. For me, that's the only way. All the numbers will be factual on both sides. We can add them all up. We can take the rent in for 3 years. We can take in everything. We own the vehicles, or the vehicles are there. It's not like we have to outfit it. We just have to do it. So if we're costing us $1,000 a month for 3 years, there's 30,000. We can wait for the balance sheet. But to get a decent factual balance sheet, it's cost us some money. And how can you make a good decision when one side you got some numbers and the other side you're just guessing? I know it costs money, but how do you do it?
If I may, I know I'm probably jumping ahead, but to the storage, but did the county ever do an inspection on the curling rink floor? Because I feel like it could be a heck of a lot cheaper storing them there than standard. I mean, Siksika, sorry.
Through the chair, as I understand it, and again, I'm not speaking from any experience in that department, I believe we've got money going in to fix that curling rink floor, and I believe putting the weight of fire trucks on it would be detrimental to its future use.
Do we have money going in to fix the curling rink floor? In Gleason? I don't think so.
No.
We were never planning to upgrade that, so I would like cost analysis on keeping the fire trucks in the curling rink rather than Siksika, because if I can save $500 a month, that's a choice to make.
Just a question to Jason on that. I don't, just remembering the curling rink down there, if you're going to store trucks in there, you've got to have an access for them. There isn't an access in there big enough for those trucks. Is there?
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, by no means, I'm curious. I didn't ever hear information back, so I could be completely wrong, but I just never heard anything back, so.
Oh, through the chair, I'm not sure if we've fully investigated that option, so it is something that could come back at a future council meeting too.
And if whatever could come back could just confirm if there could be a potential impact on the floor, because I have heard from the community that they would like, there's not an immediate plan to reinstitute curling, but they would like to keep that possibility open. So if it's going to, compact cooling lines or something like that, I'd like to be aware of that as well. I know. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
I'll move that we go through the process of the remediation and then make our decisions after we have the remediation done. 'Cause we need to do one way or the other, whether we demolish it or do anything to it, there has to be some remediation done. So we may as well get that out of the way, even if it's minimal remediation. When they start remediation, they may find that there's nothing that says they have to go all the way through it if they find that there's more. But at least start the process, have a look at it, get that stuff torn out of there, so that they can have a look at it. Because all the remediation does is help with the demolition, if that's where you go at the end of the day, because you're just pulling out the bad stuff. You're not replacing it with anything, you're just getting rid of the bad stuff.
There's a motion on the floor, discussion.
Would you consider to amend that to add, once we have ownership?
I don't think so. When Glenn explained that, and we've done that in other ones, we're going to get the ownership of it whether we like it or not. They don't want it. So I think the bigger issue here is time, and I think they're moving forward, and I think that it will go through with what I'm hearing today. And whether the ownership is there today or tomorrow, we still need to make that we'll probably have ownership before the remediation starts, because I can't see anybody going in there before the new year. So we'll probably have ownership before then, right?
Can you just hit the button again? Sorry, Mr. Nelson. Thank you.
Each of you represents a different area in the county, and maybe you could ask yourselves if you'd like a fire hall taken out of your community, for whatever reason.
I would just like to point out, one of our most populated areas doesn't have a fire hall. So not everybody is in the luxury of the rural areas.
Thanks, Mr.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? Margaret. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to remediate the Clunie Fire Hall? Opposed? Motion is carried. We have an agreement before us.
Through the chair, just if I may, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, whatever you want to call it, to the staff, to Mike especially, through the remediation process, once you have somebody in there remediating that, or to, I guess Stuart would be the one looking after that, I guess. Is it possible that you keep a close enough eye on that so that while they're in their process of remediation and they get to a point where, oh, this is going to cost, that can be stopped at that point and then come, so that we have some control over whether or not we end up with a $60,000 bill or a $20,000 bill?
Stuart.
Through the chair, we had a very similar deal in the village of Champion. That's why we built them a new hall, because it was raining asbestos in the upstairs portion of the fire hall. So we did start the remediation process because we can't have asbestos raining from the ceiling. And I got to the point it was diminishing returns. It would have been cheaper in the long run just to build the hall than to remediate the building. So the county divested itself of that building, and a new occupant went in, and they decided to spend that money. But during that process of remediation, if you follow closely, you'll find that break-even point where it's, no, we're done, pull pin out of the building.
And administration will keep council apprised of that situation. Thank you. We actually have a 10 o'clock appointment. We have Mr. Rob Woody here with Wheatland and Adjacent District Emergency Medical Services. We'll take a 5-minute break. Back to order. I'd like to welcome Rob Woody, Operations Director of Wheatland and Adjacent District EMS. Good morning. Yeah, if you can hit the button, and our meetings are recorded.
Thanks very much for your introduction, Amber. That takes out the first paragraph of my report. I think I know most of everybody here, and I'd like to thank Alan, who obviously isn't here today, and Wheatland County Council for inviting me to meet with you today to just briefly speak about some of Wheatland EMS's highlights of 2018. Throughout this very brief report, I encourage that if you have any questions, please feel free to fire them at me, and I'll try and answer them the best that I can. As I said, a very high-level brief overview, because one day seems to run on to the next in our business. But please feel free to ask questions as I go along. So just a little bit of background. Wheatland EMS has been in existence for 30 years now. We operate 3 ambulances 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We currently operate under a contract with Alberta Health Services as a contracted provider. We have 1 advanced life support ambulance and 2 basic life support ambulances. We respond to all emergency medical requests for help, as well as provide inter-facility transfers for patients from the Strathmore Hospital to other hospitals within the province. We also operate...
Sorry.
That's fine. Let's wait till it finishes. There we go. We also operate the Wheatland Regional 911 Dispatch Center, which is one of 21 primary service answer points for 911 within the province. We answer all 911 calls, both from landlines and cellulars that hit cell towers within the county, and dispatch 10 fire departments. In 2017, which is looking back a year before, we had a record year in call volume. That was up 9.8% over 2016. We had responded to 3,880 calls in 2017. In 2016, it was 3,531, so we had a substantial increase in 2017. 2018 so far, we're 0.48% ahead of 2017. However, December's been a little bit quieter. We had a crazy December last year, so whether we end up a little bit behind our call volume last year, a little bit ahead, it's still a couple of weeks to forecast, but it's going to be close as far as our busyness and call volume. A couple highlights. At the beginning of the year, Alberta Health Services launched a new updated set of medical control protocols. This is our recipe book or cookbook of how we treat various medical situations, trauma situations, and so far. It's basically standardized protocols that all paramedics and basic or primary care paramedics and advanced care paramedics use across a province. So it's a standard set of treatment protocols. They were revised in late 2017 and were implemented in early 2018, which required all of our staff to undergo extensive online module training, as well as complete practical skills and evaluations to come in line with these new protocols. So that was all done, and we were compliant with the training of all of our staff for the launch date in January of 2018. It's actually quite a big undertaking to get everybody online. It changes the way that we follow provincial guidelines, medical control guidelines put out by the provincial medical director. In 2017 and early 18, 9 of our staff members were awarded the Alberta Emergency Services Medal, which recognizes at least 12 years of service within the province. So accomplishment for many of our staff to be presented that medal. Big undertaking, Wheatland EMS, as part of our contract, we were required to complete the Qmentum process and become fully accredited with Accreditation Canada. Our operations manager, Kevin Link, spearheaded this process and spent countless hours over a several-year period in getting our service aligned and successful in the accreditation process. It was an enormous project that he spearheaded and had lots of staff input to get us to there, and it did a terrific job in allowing us to reach this accredited status. It really is a arduous process to get there. Several initiatives that spawned out of the accreditation process in 2018. Screen just jumped here. Wheatland EMS launched our website. I encourage you all to take a look at it, www.wheatlandems.com. It just highlights some of our initiatives under safety, patient safety, some highlights and recommendations. There's some facts that you may or may not know about EMS service in the province, as well as one of the really important things is it gives an avenue for feedback, so patients or their families can provide feedback if they were happy or unhappy with the care that they were provided. That's something we want to know so that we can change processes and try and align our service delivery and follow our goals that we set and change what we're doing in order to meet the needs of our citizens. So that was one of the things that spawned out of the accreditation process, as well as we launched a Facebook page. So those two pieces of social media we didn't have before 2018. Our Facebook page has been pretty successful. We have a lot of followers. We've tried to put on a lot of sort of safety initiatives and interesting facts within the county, even weather updates when we've had some really poor weather conditions and so on and so forth. But, you know, more important, it gives an access for people to provide some input to us. So that's been interesting. April 1st, we launched through our dispatch center a work alone monitoring, as well as a destination and journey management service. We're currently providing the service for the town of Strathmore. We're still looking forward to providing peace officer monitoring for the town. We're just waiting for them to come up with a viable radio option so that their peace officers will have a dispatcher or somebody at the other end of their radio. This was a solution that they, or I guess an initiative that they were interested in doing. So our dispatchers, for the work alone piece, take information if the town has a worker that's working alone, they can call in, let our call taker know where they're working. Say, you know, I'll check back in 30 minutes. We set a timer. If we don't hear back from that worker, we try and contact them. If we can't contact them, then we escalate it up the line to their supervisor and managers and so forth. We started doing that April 1st. So far, the feedback we've had from the town has been very positive. The other thing is journey management. When some of their employees are on the road, either going to meetings or if they live out of town going home, they check in when they leave on their journey. And let's say they're going to Edmonton for a conference, they call in, you know, I'm taking Highway 2 all the way to Edmonton. I should be there in 3.5 hours. I'll check back at this time. If we don't hear back from them, then we try contacting them and again, escalate it up. So there's always risks involved when you're traveling, especially when you're traveling alone. So this has been a solution that we've been offering to the town. I did meet with the county some months ago and sort of offered the same service, but so far we haven't hammered out a deal, so certainly would like to throw that out there again as an idea. I know I met with Chris Perman and your safety person of the day back in, I think, June. Certainly like to offer that services, or it may certainly pertain to Wheatland County if you have employees that are working alone that they can check in, at least have somebody sort of overseeing them. And so far, I think it's been working really well with the town. In June, Wheatland EMS partnered with the RCMP, the Strathmore Fire Department, Strathmore Municipal Enforcement, and Victim Services to organize and host the 12th Annual Emergency Services Charity Golf Tournament. This tournament was again a big success this year. We raised, I believe, just in excess of $20,000. From that, all the monies go to charity. We presented a check to the Wheatland Regional Hospice Society for some of those charity dollars, as well as the rest of the money goes to Strathmore Victim Services to help with their operating costs. It's been a very successful tournament, and we're happy to be part of that. Some of the things we've done, our station is getting a little aged. It's about 25 years old, or just going into the 25th year. We replaced all of our HVAC stuff that was getting aged. We replaced our furnaces, air conditioners, and hot water heater for the office area. As well as we commenced an office renovation in October, which has created an extra office and more streamlined workspace. The renovation isn't quite complete, much to my dismay, but it will someday, I'm sure. Really transformed our office from the way it used to be to the way it is now, so we're really happy about that. Our favorite time of the year, in October we commenced collective bargaining with our union. Health Sciences Association of Alberta is the collective bargaining unit for our employees. Their contract expired March 31st, 2018, and we started meeting with them in October. I'm hopeful that we'll come to an agreement in early 2019, fingers crossed. It's always a really, really fun time. It's kind of like, in the political side of things, it's kind of like election time. We recently, we had ordered and took delivery of a new ambulance, so we're adding one ambulance to our fleet and cycling out one of our older ambulances. So we just got delivery about 10 days ago. Some of the plans we have for the upcoming year, we're not trying, we're undertaking an initiative to increase in-service training for our frontline practitioners, our primary care paramedics and our advanced care paramedics. We have invested in some training materials and mannequins, as well as have one of our advanced care paramedics spearheading this training initiative. So on a weekly basis, we're putting on in-service training just as when the crews have some downtime, trying to focus on just doing scenarios and increase training, which is something that we're really looking forward to. The other project that we're undergoing will be to establish a backup evacuation 911 center. This will be a new requirement coming in the new regulations in the 911 Act. So presently we have our one center. If something should happen, a tornado rolls through Strathmore, or God forbid the building burn down or become infested with mold, and we have to evacuate, we sorry, Jason. No, but I mean, it's something that we've never really thought of. I mean, we've been there doing it for years and years and years, but we're going to be enacting a backup evacuation center, and we will test that sort of a couple times a year. Hopefully never have to really be in there anytime full time, but it's something that's required under the new 911 Act. As well as we will continue to meet with Alberta Health Services Dispatch Center, who dispatches our ambulance, as well as dispatches or alerts our dispatch center for the activation of the medical first responders within the fire department. We've had issues over the last several years. They've done a poor job of alerting us in order to alert our first responders to get out the door to help people within the community. We did establish a dispatch issue resolution working group about 8 weeks ago. We meet every 2 weeks, go over some issues we've seen, and I'm really hoping that this is a trend. We've seen an improvement in them alerting us more timely for the first responders. We're actually getting some resolutions to some of the dispatch issues that we've put forward. So it seems like they're actually making an effort to actually try and improve what they're delivering. So we'll be on them every 2 weeks to try and keep on top of these issues as they arise, and hopefully will help any more of my hair going gray. Along with that, we're continuing to do some upgrades to our station. We're replacing our makeup air unit and heating unit in our ambulance bays in early 2019. So far, that's about it. I'm sure there'll be about 10 more curveballs that are thrown and things we have to react to in 2019, but looking forward to the challenge. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you for the update, Rob. I know on behalf of council, we appreciate the service that Wheatland EMS and the dispatch center provide to the county.
Great. Thank you.
It's a valuable service, and I know our ratepayers rely on it, so thank you.
Great.
Does anybody have any questions?
Rob, could you explain a little bit? Recently, we had dramatic increases in our dispatch requisitions. It went from $2 to $8, I believe. Just recap that a little bit and what the future maybe look like.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Glenn. Back probably 18, 19 years ago when Wheatland EMS took over fire dispatch or started dispatching, just to give a little history, back then, if you had a fire emergency, you would call I think back in those days, a 7-digit number, because you didn't have to put the prefix in first, so you just had to call your local fire department, and what would happen is a fire phone would ring in a couple of the firefighters' basements or somewhere in their house. Usually each department had about 2 fire phones and 2 members that were sort of stuck hanging around home in case somebody has a fire, that they can phone their local emergency number and their fire phone would ring. Back when we established the 911 center and had a dedicated personnel doing 911 call answer, we took over doing fire dispatch. So basically we took over the county fire departments, as well as Siksika Fire Department and the town of Strathmore Fire Department dispatch. We have a dedicated communications expert in there, again, 24/7, 365. Back when we started that, we requisition the municipalities $2 per capita for helping offset some of the costs of having some of our operational costs, mainly having the staffing there. That same funding formula sort of stayed in existence until about 2015, when we recognized that the call answer portion, or the fire dispatch portion, was being grossly underfunded for what was being provided. Fortunately, in the day when we were requisitioning for ambulance as well, prior to 2009, when the municipalities paid an ambulance requisition, they were paying for ambulance. We, being a combined service delivery model where we had both EMS services and fire dispatch services, basically one budget, same dollars coming in, we were able to handle it. What we had to do in 2009 is start to separate out our true dispatch costs for 911 call answer and fire dispatch. That's when we solely recognized that the $2 per capita funding that had been in existence since 2000 was not meeting the needs, or the financial needs of keeping that operation in service. So we spent several years trying to come up with a solution, and in 2015, the WDEMSA board put forward a motion to escalate the fire dispatch requisition from $2 to $4, and then in the subsequent year from $4 to $6, and then in 2018 from $6 to $8 per cap. That did certainly help in getting us somewhat caught up. We're still probably facing a little bit of a deficit yearly on operational costs at the $8 per capita. Just at our recent board meeting, as Glenn discussed, and I think we decided to hold the fire requisition at the $8 mark for 2019 going forward here. Something that we will look at trying to do is introduce a small increase. We went from $2 to $8 in 3 years, and we know that that was very difficult on the municipalities, a huge financial burden. So we're looking at doing a small incremental, taking a look at a small incremental increases yearly beyond, for 2020 and beyond, to try and keep us ahead and being able, basically right now, we're still operating, but what we're finding is that it's just not quite enough. So 2019 is the same. 2020, we're going to look at it and try and come up with small incremental increases and keep that going so that we have a sustainable funding source for dispatch. Does that answer or cover? Any questions?
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
We appreciate how our emergency services work together too. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me out to talk about our service, and well, would certainly be more than happy to come back at any time that you have any questions or like any further information. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.
I'll move.
All in favor? Motion carried. I notice our 11 o'clock appointment is here. I believe Mr. Wolf? Yes. Would council consider hearing from Mr. Wolf first? Okay. It doesn't matter to me. We'll let you go. Yeah. So 3.3B, Valley Bus Society.
Okay.
Just a note, our meetings are recorded.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm just here with the Valley Bus Society. That's the service that we have in Drumheller, for the Drumheller area, for the transportation of seniors and persons with disabilities. And looking at some of the cost recovery that we can possibly get from other municipalities to offset some of the expenses that we have. We only have about a dozen or so people that we pick up from the north end of the county, but we're just looking at methods of increasing our rates, not increasing the rates. We can't increase the rates. People are on fixed incomes, age and so on. They just cannot afford to raise rates. But to cover some of our funding. if we pick up a person from Dallam, for instance, we recover, outside areas, we recover about 45% only of the rate from, by the person. So we need municipal support for these. So I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for. One of the things that we're looking at is possibly if we could, to gain, Hussar might be a little bit on the low side because Hussar is about equal distance from from Strathmore to Drumheller for shopping or medical. And so of course you're going to want to keep them in your own area, but people like Dallam and so on, one of the options that we have would be to have a fixed bus route, for instance, once a week, and pick up a number of people and go into Drumheller as well as making appointments for the clinic for the same day and so on. Would be one of the options that we're looking at doing. Just that this year we are going to be closing the year with about a $4,000 deficit, so we're just looking around for other sources of funding that we could possibly have for the areas. This county has always donated money for the purchase of new buses, but not for the operations of those buses.
Do you have a specific request for an amount kind of based on ratio of usership from Wheatland County, or have you looked at that?
There was, the CEO for Drumheller, Daryl, said that there was an offer from Wheatland for a $5,000 for 2018. But he didn't know if that was going to be continuous or what it was. He had no further background.
Yeah, through the chair, that came to us a couple of years ago. We've been looking at supporting the Drumheller Valley Bus because of its support to the northeast corner of our municipality, basically Dallam and a little bit of the Rosebud area. And the members in that community do use the bus down in Drumheller, and they asked for some. We were giving them, I think it was $2,500, and when they were purchasing a bus, and we upped it to $5,000, and the motion last year was to continue the $5,000 for the support of the Valley Bus in the area. And personally, I think it's a good service down there. I know we've used it with our family, and other ones have used it in Drum. You can go down there and use it for $5, and you can move your ailing or older or whatever you want to call it, parents or relatives around the city to doctors or town to doctor's appointments and that kind of stuff. So I would put a motion on the floor that we continue the funding to the same level as we did last year to the Valley Bus organization.
For the 2019 budget.
For 2019, yep.
Discussion, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Wolf?
We also do a lot of medical transfers as well. So it's $135 to go to Calgary, $125 to go to Red Deer, and so on, which of course is right now they're all being subsidized by the town of Drumheller. So it'd be nice to be able to expand the area by having subsidies from the affecting municipalities.
Mike?
So through the chair, a couple options. You can make a motion today, or you can direct staff to come back with an RFD for request for funds from the 2019 budget.
We do have a motion on the floor. Is there discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in. Yeah. Thank you. Under 3.2B, we have an agreement between Siksika Nation, Fire and EMS, and Wheatland County for storing Clooney fire apparatus.
Just before we go there, going back to the Clooney Fire Hall, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that upon completion of remediation, that when the project is quoted, if the quote is over $25,000, that be brought back to council so that we can look at that and decide at that point again whether or not we're going to continue with that? For the
Restoration.
restoration.
So my
of the-
understanding is we just approved a remediation at this point. Was that correct, Margaret? So it will have to come back to council. We just approved the funds for the remediation at this point.
So it will come back to us, even if it's like,
So to direct staff to get a more,
Well,
or
we've
just
got-
if
we've
it
got-
exceeds
we've got-
25,000,
well, we've got an estimate at 25,000.
but we haven't approved that action.
Well, I would just like to put a motion on there that I'm okay at $25,000. I don't want to tie staff's hands, but if it's going to be above that.
So to proceed
for
with
the-
restoration
for the
or
restoration, right?
reconstruction.
Because we've all figured out that if the remediation's going to go ahead. And then if we're going to look at 25,000, that's to get the fire hall back into service. That's all fine and dandy. But if it's all of a sudden a whole bunch more than that, then I would like to see that come back to council but like if they've got quotes of 25,000 or they get firm quotes of 25,000. So, yeah.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Discussion.
It was both clarification on that. Just so clarification that this motion is for up to a maximum of 25,000 for a repair of the building after remediation is complete. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct.
And if the quote was to exceed 25,000, it would come back to council for discussion.
Yes.
So you're saying that, I think I like where you're going. You're saying that if once the remediation done and they go in there and look at it and they come up with a quote under 25,000, they can go ahead without coming back to council?
That's correct.
Discussion on the motion. Sorry, Margaret. Discussion on the motion.
I'd like to see the report back anyways and let council decide, no matter the cost.
I don't care one way or the other. I just think that 25,000 seems to be in my mind, seems to be a fair reconstruction cost, which I don't think is achievable, but, yeah, but, that way, this can go ahead then, right? Like once remediation's done, once they get and then there's no delay to coming back to council, but if it's more than $25,000, then I want that delay in there, and I want us to be able to discuss that.
I think we should be able to discuss it either way, because what if council's will is changed at that time? And what if we don't want to repair?
Ben and then Donna. Sorry. Okay, Donna.
I think Tom's motion actually puts, even if it's just for storage, at 25,000, we'd be paying that for storage anyway, even if it's not used.
All depends if we have a report back from the curling rink, because it is our building. So if we can get free storage in our building, we would be saving $30,000 that way.
So through the chair, Tom's motion says that staff, once remediation is done, if they have a quote for under 25,000, they can go ahead with restoration. You're saying you want to hear what that is before they go ahead with restoration. Then you better put a friendly amendment or do another motion, because his motion gives staff the authority to move forward.
Is there further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion to restore the Cluny Fire Hall up to $25,000? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, now we can do the agreement.
Through the chair. Good morning. I was asked to organize a vehicle storage agreement, and the best solution for us at this time was to organize something with Sixica. So we were finally able to get together with Tom Littlechild, who has authority to sign. The vehicles will be stored indoor and have 24-hour access. So we'll be able to put the gear with the vehicles, and the firefighters will be able to respond from Sixica with Gleason to the Clooney response area. As respecting the motion that Councillor Wilson made back earlier this year in the summer. So it'll be under the direction of Chief Welcher in Gleason that Clooney will be responding. In your break, I had a brief discussion with Stuart Larson, who informed me the weight of the fire truck will crush the floor in the curling rink, the tender specifically. Did you want to speak to that?
Through the chair. In regards to a curling rink floor, they're typically 3 to 4 inches concrete depth with the cooling system running through them with an unrated bed for the geo. So axle weight just of the water alone is 30,000 pounds. So for future use of that building, we'd probably destroy the floor and the system completely and the trucks.
We do appreciate that information. Thank you.
Just a question, though. We have got rig mats that are coming back from Rosebud. Not rig mats.
Unless you got a Quonset.
We appreciate that information. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the request is that council approve our lease agreement with Sixica for a 3-month term, renewable for by month after that.
Any questions? Or is somebody prepared to make a motion?
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We also have a request before us regarding Gleason Fire Department Capital Reserve.
Through the chair. In discussions with the Gleason Fire Department, they're very anxious to complete the transfer of assets agreement. Part of that agreement is to put their money that we owe them. We now have their books for 2016 and 17. So they were never paid their operational fees for 2016 and 17. So that amount would be put into a reserve to be used in the Gleason Response District. So there is a policy that council needs to approve to allow us to have that reserve fund set up for them, and that capital be used in their response area.
Can you elaborate on that a little? I'm just hearing people don't necessarily understand. Is this common practice? Has this happened previously in other fire areas?
Thank you. Yes, we did it previously with the Strathmore Rural Association when they turned over their 2 departments to us. There was money set aside for them that we put in reserve that can only be used in that response area. So we're asking council to set up a reserve for which you will approve all transfers from and to, and that the reserve is to ensure funds are raised by the Gleason Association are available for future capital use in that area. So it's a wee bit of a savings account for them.
Any questions?
A new building, that's a capital project, right? Would those funds be able to go towards the building of a new hall?
Through the chair, absolutely. And in fact, some of the Strathmore rural funds were given to each of the Carsland and at the time Strathmore Rural Hall. And those funds, the Strathmore rural firefighters asked that their portion of the funds go towards the Carsland Hall. So that is how we got to the $300,000 for the Carsland Hall. The communities also raised money, but yes, that is absolutely possible.
I shouldn't even go here, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Why were the funds withheld in 2016 and 17?
Through the chair, they didn't have their books completed, and upon completion of their books for those years, we pay them their operating fees.
Did they ever complete them?
Through the chair, we are in possession of the books.
They have? Oh.
Any further questions? Somebody prepared to make a motion to approve the fire capital reserve policy? Ben has moved. Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. We also have a request for the asset transfer for Gleason Rural Fire Association.
So we've been working on both Clooney and Gleason at the same time. Gleason is very anxious to have this completed. They are really excited about becoming part of the Wheatland County Fire Service. The transfer of assets agreement was drawn up by our lawyer and reviewed by them. I need to mention that the Gleason Association does not have a lawyer, but they were in favor of all the agreements. So the agreement hasn't been changed other than to put in dates that are appropriate to today's date, and they all signed it. So.
Jason's moved that we approve and authorize the transfer of assets. Any questions?
I'd just like to thank the Gleason Association for doing an incredible job in the last 3 years. They've certainly worked alongside of us. This is going to be one of the smoothest transfers we've ever had. They are working very much like the Wheatland County Fire Service departments are, and have been very amenable to everything. So I'd like to thank them for their time.
And I've heard good things as well from the community and from the firefighters for the transfer, so. Go ahead.
Is that a total transfer?
That is a complete transfer of all lands, buildings, and assets as they are. We're accepting as they are, as is, and is complete transfer of absolutely everything, and no monies have changed hand. This association wishes for everything to remain in service in the Gleason fire response area, and so it's just a straight transfer of assets.
Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We have an RFD regarding a support for the hospice from Wheatland Housing Management Board. Glenn, did you want to speak to this, or?
We had the Hospice Society come to a regional partnership meeting back a few months, and it was requested, if there's any questions on that presentation, I'll try and answer them. And then we had this topic come up at our Committee of the Whole meeting, I believe, and Council asked for a letter. At the Committee of the Whole, there was support, but we would like to have a letter, so we have it on file, and then we write a letter back. And it's just a letter or an understanding that the Housing Board will negotiate and enter into an agreement with the Hospice Society. Their main goal, they're hoping through donations to cover the operational costs. But if we get this, it helps out the lodge in securing partnerships and moving forward. I had an opportunity to go up to Edmonton and talk to the ministry up there, and they're moving forward with a new funding thing, which I haven't seen yet, but they're moving away from the granting structure and into the investing type structure, which allows a lot more freedom to the associations when you're building something. We can have a LAP grant part, we can have the hospice part, we could have supportive living, we can have extended care, we can have whatever we can finance and do a business case for. So this all goes together into the pot. Hopefully we can get some funding and move forward with it. Yeah. So if there's any questions, I'll endeavor to answer them.
Through the chair, I'm just assuming this letter went out to all the villages too.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I can't remember, but Strathmore wanted a memorandum of understanding signed too, and I think that was brought up at and we haven't got all the villages' names on it. And I left it up to Strathmore to fill it out if they want. I can see, we talked at the board, if we want a letter from all the villages in the county that we're planning on building a new one, but everyone knows, and it's part of a board activity. I don't know what Strathmore was up to, but they're not filling it out, so we just left that one alone, so this one is.
Well, if they're asking for a letter from us, they should be asking for a letter from all the partners.
Yeah.
They're on the
They are.
memorandum of understanding.
Every village and the town got a letter similar to this, and we're hopefully see if they.
Page 158, you can see.
And plus, I
they're on
believe
there.
the Lions Club too. The Lions Club are voting members on the housing body.
I'll move that Wheatland County Council show support in, how would you? In a formal letter to the Wheatland Housing Management Body as they enter a negotiating partnership with Wheatland Area Hospice Society.
I think so.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Let's move down to our correspondence, just to give some time for 11:30. Down. Yes, Margaret. You betcha. We'll take a 5-minute break. To order. Welcome. I'll just let you know if you can introduce yourself, and just a note that our meetings are recorded.
Yeah, Don Vanderbilt, Rapier, County of Wheatland. And I'd like to thank, through the chair of the council, for meeting me concerning our problem. And it's kind of nice to get cleaned up and not be going to a funeral. Yeah, on the screen, our biggest problem is there's acreages to the south of us, and the speed that they're coming, past our driveway, which is right onto 22X, and my son's driveway, which is probably 50 yards farther south, and the speed that they're coming between the two places is unreal. They just don't seem to want to slow down. The sign there, I put them up, drive slowly, use respect. South side of the canal, which is Gosling's, and she couldn't make it here today. I put a sign up south of her place. Same thing, drive slowly, use respect. Doesn't seem to be working. We had a dog ran over about a year ago, and the lady felt so bad that she brought us flowers the next day, and I said, well, give them to the dog. And it's not all the acreages, but there is a lot of people just don't show us respect. They're just not slowing down, and it's creating a dangerous situation. And just rolling. I've got different pictures. That one's looking south towards the canal. And Goslings live on the south side of the canal. That's taken from our driveway. Roll again, please. Same thing. You can tell the road is quite traveled. Just keep rolling. Keep rolling. Don't back up one, if you can. Okay, that's from our second driveway, looking to 22X. And by that time, people should be slowing down. But they're not. Even this morning, this one guy came from the bridge, the Canal Bridge south, and he hit 22X, never stopped, nothing. He was gone. And same thing in the evenings when these people come home. And there's getting to be more and more acreages south of us, and it just doesn't seem to be the respect there that they're showing. Police officers came out. There was no speed over 80, was there?
Through the chair, we did, if I may speak on, so there's an RFD in front of you. What we did is we discovered that the county's in possession of a traffic counter that can monitor speeds as well. So we had it placed out on Range Road 265 for a 7-day period. We didn't publicize it, and the location, my understanding from Luis, was that it was placed near the canal. And we do have some statistics, and there were an average, so what we would say is the average speed southbound of that on that roadway was 60.91 kilometers per hour, and the average speed northbound was 53.86 kilometers per hour in that zone. That's obviously an average speed. The 85th percentile on southbound was 74 kilometers per hour, and the 85th percentile northbound was 67 kilometers per hour, and the speed limit on that road is 80 kilometers an hour. It broke it down that the average amount of vehicles over the 7 days was 25 vehicles per day on that roadway. And that was southbound and 26 northbound. So we did get a couple of high speeds. I'm not going to deny that. Based on the count, we did have one at 100 kilometers an hour. We did have one at 97, 90.3, 93.5. The highest speed we did actually get was 107 kilometers an hour. But out of the total of 269 vehicles, 27 were in excess of the posted speed limit based on that. And of course, northbound, again, out of 277 vehicles, 27 were in excess of the posted speed limit. And of those, northbound, 84.5, 83 kilometers an hour. So there are higher speeds, or there can be higher speeds on that road, but it's not, doesn't appear to be pandemic at this time.
Our biggest concern is when they're coming between the two places, Sean's place and our driveway is 50 yards apart. We were moving cattle one day and they're halfway across the road. One of the people come up and had to get to that highway. He blew his horn. And our cattle were crossing from east to west, eh? Just, some of them are good. Some of the folks are real good. But there is a few bad ones. Another thing is dust control. There's a tree farm south of us. And during the summer, he's quite busy. Most of his trees are going to Calgary and creating a lot of dust. So also in the summer with the traffic flow of our acreage people and whatnot, there is a lot of dust being created. And that's about all I can say. I know.
Council have any questions? Donna?
So 25 cars a day, would that be classified as high volume?
No, so through the chair, we, in our current dust control policy, we set our parameters at 100, anything over 100 vehicles will consider dust control applied by the county. The residence is fully able to apply dust control at their own cost whenever they wish. Granted, these the dates that these traffic counts were done was between November 30th and December 11th of this year. So if there is a potential increase because of the tree farm there, we wouldn't be aware of that until the spring, summer months here. So yeah, as far as the current traffic counts, we can look at reassessing that in the future months and see if it does meet the parameters. But as it sits right now, it does not.
Don, like you're right on the corner. There's no way that even posting that road at 60, that they're going to, they won't be going 60 when they're coming up to that corner. They can't. So the 60 is not going to help you out at all.
And with the speed limits that Chris mentioned, with the speed that they mentioned, the average was right around that 60, maybe a little higher. So, I mean, they're already not going the speed limit, and those odd ones, I mean, talking from experience, no matter what the speed limit is, I don't think they're going to change it. I think those guys going 100 are going to go 100, whether it's 60 or 80. I don't feel it necessary to change the speed limit when people are already abiding by the limit, if not going slower then.
Have you considered maybe cattle crossing signs or children at play if you guys are on the road a lot,
We
like that?
did have children at play, or children, they weren't at play, what were they, just children? Warning signs. Caution signs.
Just caution children, they don't play on the highway, so we don't put up children at play signs on the highway.
Our biggest thing is probably try and get the people to show us some respect when they're going between the two places, and even going south across the Canal Bridge. I know Sharon Goslin is quite concerned of the speed that's going in. Like the 60 isn't going to help, and I realize that, but it might be a caution thing. I just don't know what to do.
I know our peace officers too, when they're aware of like problem areas, I know that they try and focus their kind of patrolling and enforcement in those areas as well. That might be a good measure going forward as well. Just to, now that they're aware of it, and obviously they've been doing some of that monitoring, and I'm sure that will continue in the future as well. So hopefully that will help.
I think it will. Just once the people know that there's somebody out there watching them, you know, they'll just kind of respect that.
We've noticed that in other areas of the county too. Once there is a pattern of enforcement, it seems that driving patterns will change based on that enforcement as well.
Yeah, and we're all the same, and I'm the same. If you see a cop car, automatically your seat belt is done up and your speed is checked.
I do notice at our place, we cross the road just about 3 times a week with cattle. We have our cattle signs up, and most of the neighbors, they understand that there's a chance. So, I mean, yeah, we do have the odd prick that flies through them, but that's, if they want to total their car, that's not my problem.
The odd what? I didn't want to call him that. Anyhow, I'd like to thank council for listening to our concerns, and I know probably things haven't changed. Ben wants to be the first one at the egg sandwiches. So. Thanks again.
Mr.
Wish you all
Vanderveld,
good.
thank you for coming in and bringing it
Wish
to
you all
council's
good Christmas,
attention.
guys.
Thank you. Scott?
I just wanted to bring something forward too. Another effective tool that we have is those speed signs that monitor and flash that we used in the hamlets. I don't know if we put any more in the budget for more of those, because they are extremely effective. And I know in town they work good, and maybe no, that could be as well, but I mean, if there is problem areas, it's a way that they are movable, because we've moved some around already, and they work. And they do have a flash, and they do all that, and they're very effective. You just look at the taillights when they see them.
Yeah, through the chair, you're right. We've put them up in numerous hamlets now with really good results. Hesitant to put them in the rural areas right now, just because we do have a potential for some illicit use. Yeah, we do have, looking at the traffic counters, we do have multiple traffic counters like this one that we got this information from. Really valuable information from these new traffic counters that we've been buying here. So we can utilize these and put them across different areas in the county to get really focused numbers on where we're doing. And like I say, after we're made aware of this, we will review this site back in the summer to see if it is a potential concern.
I'd like to put a motion out there that because the 60 kilometer I don't think is going to work, to deny that, but to go ahead and do the traffic count in the spring or summer on that same road.
Any discussion on the motion?
Just for clarification, traffic counts with
I think volume is my concern. That would be dust control, I guess, right?
Yeah, so through the chair, the motion, as it sits, what I see it, we'll go back out and review perform another traffic count in the summer. If it meets the threshold for dust control over the 100, because it is close to an intersection and there is residences, that's all what we weigh in putting in county applied dust control. And then we'll bring that back for a decision by council.
Just use your mic, Ben. Sorry.
But this, according to what this is saying, this isn't an issue of dust control, it's an issue of speed. Request isn't for dust control, the request is for speed limit reduction. I'm not opposed to the traffic count, but I wouldn't
well,
put
well,
the dust
Don
control in there
mentioned
until after we have the.
Don had concerns with dust control. He mentioned it here, so.
I wouldn't put it in there till I had the traffic count. Then I'd deal with it. Yeah, deal with the traffic count.
Are we clear on the motion? Glenn?
Just a question to staff. Now that we know there's a problem there and we've had a thing, are we going to do any enforcement there? Are you going to go around there a little more often? Or because I think that 80 is probably a safe speed if they follow it. It's the 100 guys you're worried about. And
So through the chair, even before this was arisen, Mr. Mandavelli in the past had been in contact with our department. We do make targeted patrols to that area as time permits. It's the same with every area, right? We're very limited in staff and we have a lot of concerns in other areas. So we do our best to make sure we're hitting all these targeted areas as much as we can in order to facilitate statistics gathering and to calm the traffic. I can speak for once we received this letter, our officers spent a lot of time down on that road trying to gather statistics before we got the traffic, or we realized the traffic counter would actually do speeds. What we find is when we get these complaints with these speed concerns, when we go sit there and mark patrol vehicles, people's driving habits they change, they slow down and so on and so forth. It's when we're not there is what we're trying to make sure that we're seeing, which is why I really am extremely happy with that traffic counter, so we can utilize that more when we get these concerns in these areas, on top of targeted patrols, to use these counters when we're not there in order to make sure we're seeing it, and then we can adjust accordingly to make sure we're covering where we need to be. I would love one, unfortunately. Well, and through the chair, quite honestly, we've now been given permission by the province to start utilizing slick top patrol vehicles again. And so our next patrol vehicle will be a slick top, so there won't be an overhead light bar on it. And so that might help as well, because now you'll just see a truck parked on the side of the road with no lights on top of it, and that might make it easier for us to conduct enforcement as well.
Good information. So there is a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you for coming in.
Merry Christmas.
We had 3 items of correspondence included in the package from the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association, Hope Bridges Bulletin, and the Canadian Badlands correspondence. It did look like there was a bill in there. Your motion is just to accept the correspondence at this point. Is there any discussion on that, and then we can deal with Badlands? All in favor of accepting correspondence as information? Motion carried. Are we prepared to make a motion on the Canadian Badlands, or would we like it brought back with an RFD? So the request is for $4,833. It's a 55-cent per capita funding request. Glenn?
I'll move, since we're members, that's part of being part of them.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We also had correspondence circulated from the AUC regarding notice of applications Wheatland Wind Project. Mike, you just need us to accept this as information?
A request for any concerns raised, be raised before January 4th, I think is the deadline. So this is for a new substation up near the Dallam area.
Yeah, I'll move it as information, because from the looks of it, if they carry this on, we're going to be looking at a subdivision development, or some kind of a development permit or subdivision development, because there's nothing at that spot right now. Just farmland right now.
Right, and through the chair, I wouldn't guarantee that this is not exempt under the AUC regulations. We may not see something more than this at the council table. It's for a substation and
For a substation
transmission line.
that is farmland though, but before they can put a substation in there, they have to get some kind of an approval from us.
Not if they're exempt under the AUC.
So who gives them permission? Who gives them the setbacks? Who gives them all? Where does that come from?
That would be what this notification is here. And then, just much like oil and gas is exempt under AER from bringing forward a lot of their proposals to us, this is a notification from the AUC that this potential. So I can find out more information as far as how many of these structures will be needed development approval, because there is the potential that some of it is development.
Well, yeah, because I know that the area that they're putting it in is on the corner
Right.
of the 564, so their setbacks have to be at least 150 meters if it follows the provincial highways authority. Somebody has to give, there has to be something somewhere. It doesn't fall under Ag General, does it?
No, but so through the chair, what we've done in the past is sent them basically a notification and a request that they follow all the setback requirements laid out in our land use bylaw. That's kind of a standard
So
response that we come back.
we will get further. We'll still get something further if this goes through. I can't see it just being all of a sudden that somebody is, the landowner had to sign something. They can't put it in there without the landowner's permission.
The landowner definitely.
So, anyways, I'll move it as information for now.
Yeah.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. That's the end of our agenda. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Thanks, Glenn. All in favor? Yes.